gather this afternoon to say farewell and to celebrate a wondrous life that has touched and impacted not only the folks that are gathered in this space, but even the world. And so we gather in this space and we invite you to allow this space to take in all of your emotion, all of your joy, all of your sadness, all of your tears, and all of your laughter. To allow this sacred space to become holy ground, holy for you to walk there before God. Let us pray. Gracious and eternal God, you are the strength of our lives. You are a refuge to us in time of difficulty and sorrow and grief. And on this day, O God, we give you great thanks for the life of Dr. William H. Greer. We give you thanks, O God, for his commitments, for the work of love, life, and justice. And we ask, O God, on this day that you would be present to us as we gather to remember and to celebrate, as we gather to give you thanks, as we gather under the shadow of your wing. We ask, O God, that you would comfort us and be present to and for us. And we ask, O God, for special blessings to be upon this family, that they may know of your love, your healing, and your grace. We ask it all in the name that is above every other name. Yea, even Jesus. I learned in having a brief conversation with Sister Corey that Dr. Greer was an usher at Howard University during the time when Howard Thurman was chaplain there. And I shook with a little joy because I love Howard Thurman. And as she said those words, there was a line that came through for me from a meditation that he writes about death. And I thought that it would be appropriate to share it. The valley of death, Thurman writes. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow, my journey through the valley of the shadow of death may be hurried, swift. If so, this fact may reduce my fear, my anxiety. The time interval may be so short, and so much may happen that fear does not have a chance at me. This lack of fear occurs with acute illness sometimes, or with exposure to sudden danger. But if the illness is long and drawn out, there is a time for the gradual unfolding of the real meaning of my condition. Then I seem to be more completely at the disposal of all kinds of fears, as well as fear itself. Thus, I walk through the valley of the shadow. The valley of the shadow of death. Is there some important difference between the valley of death and the valley of the shadow of death. There is something which seems more deeply sinister about the valley of the shadow. There is a sense of impending danger, of threat. It is of the war of nerves which life seems to be waging. The axe does not fall. I do not see the axe, but always there is squarely across my path the shadow of the axe. Such extended experiences shatter the nerves and tend to demoralize the life. Fear of this quality seems completely destructive. Yet, I will fear no evil. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because God is with me. His presence makes the difference because it cancels out the threatening element of the threat, the evil element. Of course, I may linger or I may die. I may suffer acutely, or all my days may rest upon an undercurrent of muted agony. I shall not be overcome. God is with me. My awareness of God's presence may sound like magic. It may seem to some to be the merest childlike superstition. But it meets my need and is at once the source of my comfort and my heart of peace. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil.
Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is new. Oh, Mama may have, and Papa may have. God bless the child who's got his own. Got his own. Yes, the strong gets mourned while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grave. Oh, my mama may have, and Papa may have. God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Well, money, you've got lots of friends, oh, hang around your door. They would once more. Rich relations give crust of bread and such. Well, you can help yourself, but don't you take too much. Oh, my mama may have, and Papa may have. God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own.
How you doing? I'm really happy to see everyone and have the opportunity to take the mic, so just give me a moment. I brought my mop just in case. And Gillian, if I'm ever late for my funeral, just let it be, because that's the one place I do want to be late for. But as children, we never know that we're in the company of giants. You know, it's just Dad. You know, we don't know that we're in the company of something bigger than life until it's too late, until it's much later in our life. But anyway, just to kind of give you an overview of what that life was like and about, I'm going to read the obituary, which will give you a history line. But I can't really do it by myself, and this piano player is kicking. So what I'm going to ask you to do is give me a little bottom. I'm going to read the whole obituary. You can even do the solo that you just did for her, but give me something. I'll try to get it rhythmically on, because that's how I do it, you know. That's too sad, man. That's too sad. That's too sad. Come on now. Come on. There we go. There we go. Dr. William H. Greer was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1926. He lived in Detroit, Michigan, from the age of 12 through adulthood. He attended Howard University and then transferred to the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, remaining there for medical school. He graduated from the University of Michigan School of Medicine, interned at Harlem Hospital, and completed residency in psychiatry at the Mininger School of Psychiatry in Topeka, Kansas. That's where I was born, by the way. He was trained as a psychoanalyst in Detroit, Michigan. While serving as a psychiatrist in the Korean War, he contracted polio, which left him partially paralyzed, which continued to debilitate him in later years. He resided in Detroit from 1954 to 1964 with his first wife, Aretas, raised 3 children, and continued physical rehabilitation, moved to San Francisco, where he was in private practice and supervised a community mental health clinic in San Francisco. He was professor of psychiatry at the University of California Medical Center, San Francisco, California. Dr. Greer later moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where he was professor and chairman at the Department of Psychiatry at Meharry Medical School, then became professor of psychiatry at Wayne State University School of Medicine. He was a fellow at the Adlai Stevenson Institute, University of Chicago. He was a consultant to the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, the Department of Justice, committees of the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, and other U.S. government agencies. He served as a consultant to Canada, the Republic of Portugal, and the Republic of Guyana. He married his second wife, Moselle, to whom he was married for 10 years until her death. He was the lead author of the book, Black Rage, which he co-authored with Price M. Cobbs. It became a New York Times bestseller in 1968. The book is considered to be a seminal work on racial inequality in the United States. They also co-authored The Jesus Bag, published in 1971. Besides writing biographical essays about extraordinary people he'd known, he wrote poetry, he loved jazz and classical music, and he was a history buff. He was well read on Caesar, Genghis Khan, and American history. In particular, he related to African Americans, as it related to African Americans, Friends and family members remember his sense of humor and his commitment to human rights and social justice. He is survived by his son, Jeffrey Clayton Greer, and grandson, Gillian Crashon Greer of San Francisco. His son, David Allen Greer, and granddaughter, Louisa Dombey Greer Kim of Los Angeles. His daughter, Elizabeth Ann Greer of Detroit. His wife of 23 years, Corey Ort. Stepson, Derry Carmon, and stepdaughter, Selena Carmon. He lived in Encinitas, California.
Please say, Jeffrey is a hard act to follow.
Okay.
They'll be so pleased that you set the tone that way. As Dr. Greer's family, we wish to express the deepest thanks for all the outpourings of love and compassion that have been bestowed upon us during this very difficult time. We have received many letters of sympathy, offers of help, acts of unconditional love, flowers, and phone calls. We truly feel cocooned in your love. Great friends stay with us in hard times. We love you, we bless you, and we behold Christ in you. The following is not an exclusive list, but we would like to mention Angie Martin, Ursula Barr, Dr. Parveen Ghaffari, Art Palfrey, Susan and Shane Gantz, Sherry Campton, Dr. Gordon and Mrs. Virgil Montgomery, Yvonne Williams, Harriet Morrison, Vanessa and John Murchison, David Dr. Yoder. Excuse me, that would be Dr. David Yoder. Mark Jenkins and Ralph Martin have been invaluable in planning and producing this memorial service. Our thanks to Reverend Dr. Arthur Cribbs and Reverend J. Lee Hill for their counsel during this very difficult time. Thank you.
I would like to read reflections from Dr. Price Claus, as you know, who helped collaborate Black Rage. I regret that medical issues prevent me from joining you today in the celebration of the life of Bill Greer, a dear friend and trusted collaborator. At this memorial, please let me share with you some of the particulars of our collaboration and friendship. One lasting memory is his prodigious appetite for knowledge, whether to understand more deeply the psychological dynamics of the people who sought him out as a psychiatrist, or in deciphering the wonders of the world around him. As I wrote in my memoir, he was direct, he didn't suffer fools. He was a man who understood clearly the psychological burden of the people who have been pushed to the outside, forced to stay there, and given very little room for moving from that exiled state of being. We first met in San Francisco in the mid-60s, when Bill moved from Detroit to San Francisco to assume a position as the director of the city's child psychiatric clinic. We had never met face to face, but in the small world of Black psychiatrists of that day, we knew of each other and knew many people in common. Our initial meetings established a friendship and led to spirited discussions about the issues that our patients were grappling with on a daily basis. Beyond our professional interest, we shared many things in common, whether it was jazz, books, storytelling, or swapping tales of our adolescence, his in Detroit and mine in Los Angeles. During one jovial conversation, we were surprised to find out that both of us were devotees of the music of the legendary French guitarist Django Reinhardt. This was in the turbulent 60s, and our meetings took place against a constant backdrop of an explosion of long repressed feelings, daily reports of racial conflicts, and tremendous social unrest. The civil rights movement was in full throttle. Whether knowingly or not, our country was facing a social and political transformation led by its Black citizens. Many of our patients felt this acutely and were trying to understand and manage their own anger. Anger at their treatment as black men and women, and the attitudes and behavior reminding them of the residue of a second-class citizenship defining their lives. Most of the action reported was from the South, but no area of the country was immune from the effects of the movement. As our conversation went on and our friendship flourished, we both realized how deeply we were personally affected by the events surrounding us. Our positions as medical professionals and clinical professors at the medical center did not provide us with any immunity from what other black people were experiencing and feeling. Recognizing the historical moment we were living, we decided to collaborate on a book. The working title was Reflections on the Negro Psyche. We wrote and rewrote, and after several other titles, we recalled a theme in the writing of James Baldwin and settled on Black Rage. The book was released less than 3 months after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The reception was overwhelming. With one book, we had altered the way many people thought and felt about racial issues, civil rights, and opened the window for readers to glimpse what was going on in the minds and hearts of many black men and women. It was also a time when Black is Beautiful entered our culture, and the godfather of soul made it official that we were no longer Negroes, we were black people. And I remembered vividly reading the galley sent by the publisher as we painstakingly changed every use of the word Negro to black so we could be in step with the historical change. Bill and I collaborated on another book, Jesus Bag, but it was Black Rage that we knew would have the lasting relevance. I last saw Bill in September of last year, and that morning we were meeting Michael Eric Dyson, who had written an op-ed piece in the New York Times on punishment or child abuse that cited our work. We smiled at each other, and we knew we had tapped tributaries of the black experience in America that continue to resonate to this day. In our most recent conversations, Bill talked about Ferguson, Missouri, and the Black Lives Matter movement as being related to many of the issues we had written about almost 5 decades ago. Bill aged, but his mind never got old. He is now departed, but the ideas he formulated will last forever. I also would like to say a few words in a different tone. I knew that Bill was a tremendous writer, and I knew that Bill was a fighter for justice, but I knew Bill as a friend. We journeyed through many get-rich schemes, in which, of course, none of them ever worked. I enjoyed many conversations with him, for he had an obtuse view of looking at things, whether we were talking about current events, life, or just the way the sun came up in the morning. You could expect a different slant of things from Bill. This is irreplaceable. We laughed a lot. He could always make me laugh, and I cannot recall one conversation that we had in which we did not laugh. In the early years, he and his friend Guthrie loved to tease me. You see, they were semi-retired, and I was working hard in supporting a young family. I could not get off work and do some of the things that they were doing. I should mention that these excursions were always described as scroungulous adventures. Scroungulous will not be found in the dictionary. It was a word that Bill coined and loved to use just to tease me a little bit further. Whether they were traveling around San Diego or even venturing into Mexico, they would always find a way to come back and recount their made-up tales, recounting that they were scoundrels, having a scoundrelous time, and how sorry he was that I could not join them. And of course, by the time he was saying how sorry he was usually bellowing a huge laugh. Yes, at times Bill was a little mischievous. Sometimes we would sneak out to lunch to have barbecue ribs. Now, this may not seem like much, but it is at a time when Bill was a professed vegetarian. And his wife, Corey, you could say that she was a double vegetarian. We would return, and his wife would ask, "Where have you two been?" And Bill would break out with the mischievous grin of a little boy, and with a glint in his eye. We were at that great vegetarian restaurant, you know, the one in the new shopping center. Of course, this was being said while barbecue sauce was dripping down his shirt. She knew he was straying from the truth, and she knew he was straying from the truth. But with a glint in his eye and with her look of disapproval, there was an exquisite moment of eye contact that beamed with the love they shared. At this point, I would like to read one of the poems he said, or rather, I'll have my wife read the poem. It's called Down the Road to Peace.
There were many times that Bill would send me emails, and very often they would be poems that he had written. And he said to me, "Virgil, take a look at this and see what you think about it, and email me your comments." Well, I felt very inadequate, but very flattered and proud that he would even want my meager input. But this is one of my favorites. It's called I'm Just Going Down the Road of Peace. I'm just going down the road of peace. It's a good morning, ain't it? Bright sun, clear sky, and them sunflowers. What wonders. Notice how dirt has a color all its own, mostly brown, but gray and glistening, and just soft enough. Just soft enough not to hurt your feet so you can walk. Lord, you could walk forever. But me, I'm just going down home. Not far. I'm going to count the birds I see this morning. So many. You think flying feels to birds like walking does to us? Birds seem to always be headed someplace. I myself don't always feel that way. Just walking. So much of it is the putting one foot in front of the other. And the surprise when I get there. This morning, I'm just going down the road of peace. Come go with me.
The world will miss a great writer and an intellect. The world will miss a fighter, but I will miss a friend.
The following is a text of a sympathy card from Dr. Parveen Ghaffari, Professor of History of San Diego, Miramar College, and colleague of Bill's wife, Corey. Dear Corey, please accept my deep sympathy for your loss. Losing one's soulmate and life partner must be difficult beyond belief. I also want to thank you for bringing Bill into my life. As you know, Bill and I shared an intense interest in politics and history, so I always looked forward to our social visits. Bill was always well informed about world events. He was also an intellectually interesting person, so I'm thankful for all the interesting, sometimes heated discussions we had over the years. The experience that I shall always cherish was watching the presidential election of 2008 with both of you at my house. I felt privileged to experience the moment with someone with the depth of Bill's feelings and intellectual understanding of all issues in that historic event. So thank you for being a great friend and introducing me to your beloved husband. Love, Parveen.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim. My wife and I, Rosalind, have been neighbors and friends of Corey and Bill for a long time. Roz and my wife and Corey worked together at the university. And Bill and I became friends about 10 years ago, probably. We started meeting together at the house, and the four of us would go out to lunch or dinner sometimes. But he was a voracious reader, and so am I. Both of us would just plow through books, and we started sharing our interest in this. He was very taken by the story of Julius Caesar. One of the stories that was his favorite was how, as a youth, Julius Caesar was kidnapped by some pirates. And when he found out how much they were going to ransom him for, he said, no, that's not enough. Make it 10 times that. So they got the ransom, and they freed Julius Caesar, and he promptly put together an expedition, hunted down the pirates, and killed them all and took his money back. This is one of Bill's favorite stories. Also, he was taken by Cleopatra, somebody who just rose out of Egypt and became a great leader herself. And one of his favorite stories of her was, at one point, the Egyptian army was fighting the Roman army against Julius Caesar. And Cleopatra's army beat them and drove them into the Mediterranean Sea. And he said the last thing they saw of Julius Caesar was him throwing off his armor and trying to swim away from Cleopatra's army. And he always ends the story with, of course, Cleopatra was black. One of my favorite memories of Bill is one day I came over to his house to visit, and he said, Corey's made some collard greens. He said, do you want to have some? And I said, wow, I've never had collard greens. But if you've had the honor of dining at Corey's house, you know she's an amazing cook. And they were delicious. So we finished our collard greens. He looked up at me and he says, you are now officially black. He said, if anybody asks you, you just tell them you've eaten collard greens. So that is my memory of Bill. That is my experience of him even to this day. He was casual, he was inclusive, and he was funny as hell.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McPherson. Dr. William H. Greer, psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. When he started college, Bill initially majored in physics. He became interested in medicine and entered the University of Michigan Medical School. He interned in Harlem Hospital at the tail end of the Harlem Renaissance, when a house call to an apartment might reveal a famous aging singer or poet. His dream was to find a cure for schizophrenia, and he decided to specialize in psychiatry. He was accepted to the famous Menninger School of Psychiatry in Topeka, Kansas, which at the time was the largest school of psychiatry in the country. The competition for such a position at this institution was fierce. Dr. Carl Menninger was a hero to Bill. His beloved Dr. Carl, I believe, fostered Bill's compassionate nature. Bill was a strong advocate for human rights and social justice. At the time, in the late 1940s, it was widely believed that young criminals should be punished harshly. Dr. Carl pointed out that young criminals most often had experienced harsh treatment as children. He asked why people who are unable to cope should be punished even more harshly. Bill recalled with admiration an interview Dr. Carl had with a man convicted of a heinous crime. The residents gathered around Dr. Carl interviewing the patient. He first commented on the region the man was from. He said he had driven through it with his wife. He asked about some of the crops growing there. He established a rapport with the man right there in the fishbowl. He then looked the man in the eye and said, "That was a terrible thing you did. Tell me about it." Bill said Dr. Carl established the man's humanity and separated it from his criminality. It was a skill that Bill also possessed. During the McCarthy era, CIA agents were going through Bill's trash daily. He once mentioned it to Dr. Carl as a humorous anecdote of what he had to cope with. Dr. Carl became furious. He called the CIA and raged. Bill said his trash was never tampered with again. In the middle of his residency at the Menninger Clinic, Bill received his letter to report for military duty. He wrote back on clinic stationery, "I am at the Menninger Clinic. I want to come, but the doctors won't let me. I'll try to make it." He received a response within days telling him to stay where he was. When the draft board eventually learned that Bill was there as a doctor, not as a patient, he received new orders. He was assigned to a MASH unit in Korea. One of his tasks was to interview American soldiers who had been held captive by the Chinese. Bill often said that the episodes of the television show MASH were written by someone who was there at the same time he was. He recognized the characters and the situations in the episodes. He said the truth is even stranger than the supposedly fictional episodes. After a trip to Japan, Bill developed a high fever and tremendous pain in his legs. He was diagnosed with polio. The polio vaccine was already in distribution in the States, but not yet for soldiers in Korea. When he was given a medical transport, the cases of vaccines were being unloaded from a plane. He was flown to Walter Reed, where he was treated for a month, and then received a medical discharge from the Army with the status of 100% disabled. His left leg atrophied. He had to wear a brace. He walked with a limp. He went back to Menninger Clinic and finished his residency. In Detroit, he started to practice as a psychiatrist and continued studying psychoanalysis. His analyst was Editha Sturba. Sturba had worked with Anna Freud in Vienna, studying children in a school in an impoverished neighborhood. They learned that children who experienced an enriched learning environment did better intellectually and emotionally than children who suffered deprivation and abandonment. Those children who experienced the enriched environment were able to contribute more to society than children who did not. These children were more likely to have lower incomes, suffer incarceration, have family problems, and have more health issues. Anna Freud, who was Jewish, escaped to the U.S. Sturba was not Jewish, but she and her husband objected to Nazi tenets. They both escaped to the U.S. as well. Bill was proud of his connection to Freud. Anna was analyzed by Freud, Sturba was analyzed by Anna Freud, and Bill was next in the lineage. He believed he was the link to Freud. In the years of waxing and waning political and financial support for early childhood education, when projects such as Head Start and Kindergarten for All were developed and torn down, Bill voiced his arguments for the social benefits of early childhood education. He advocated for the highly successful and influential children's educational program Sesame Street to be more sensitive and inclusive toward issues relevant to children of color, and his voice was heard at the highest levels of our government. The lessons from Sturba and Menninger rang throughout his supporting arguments. Sturba was also a strong influence on Bill's development as a human rights activist and a social justice proponent. He knew that when human rights of a few are ignored, the larger society is weakened, as both Sturba and Anna Freud had demonstrated. In San Francisco, Bill taught graduate students at the Berkeley School of Social Work. Although many of the clients and students worked with were African American, their issues and living conditions were not reflected in the textbooks he saw in print. The lives of the white students were so alien to the lives of the people they made life decisions and changes over that he decided a book needed to be written that would teach about the impact of racism and inequality and injustice perpetuated sometimes without the participants being aware of the social dynamics of the psychological damage incurred. That book was Black Rage, written together with Price Cobbs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Deans. Growing up, we all have someone we admire and want to pattern our life after. For Bill, that person was Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was an athlete, a lawyer, a singer, and an actor who became involved with the civil rights movement. Bill greatly respected him, thought he was a man's man. A picture of Paul Robeson, it's on the easel as you came in the church today, hung in their bedroom so he could see it every day and be reminded of what Paul Robeson stood for. If you spent any time around Bill, you know how much he loved music. Paul Robeson was one of his favorite singers, Old Man River being one of his favorite songs. Also, I have a letter from his friend Harriet to read. The only resolved argument that Bill and I ever had involved conflicting recollections of how we first met. My version, simply in 1967, knowing how much Harry, my husband, and I would enjoy meeting him. Andy Billingsley, how much Harry, my husband, and I would enjoy meeting him. Andy Billingsley brought Bill to our home in Berkeley. In my mind's eye, I can still see us all, 6 foot plus of him standing in the foyer, hand outstretched, broad smile, big voice, big presence. Bill's version, a bit more colorful. He insisted we first met him at a picnic. Harry and I were lolling under a shade tree, the contents of our picnic basket spread out before us on a table. He wandered by alone and adrift. Supposedly, Harry called out to him, "Hey man, you're welcome to join us." And he did. So began, in either scenario, the budding of a friendship that blossomed over many years. A cherished friendship that endured both joyful and challenging times. I will never forget the Sunday morning in 1968 when Bill arrived at our door with the New York Times Magazine in hand. Black Rage, the seminal book that he had authored along with Price Cobbs, had made the bestseller. Harry, Bill, and I hugged, high-fived, backslapped, and toasted his success. Basic Books Incorporated, the publisher, struggled to keep up with the public's demands for copies. Jeffrey stated in a recent Associated Press article, his father died believing his book was as relevant today as it was when it set off the firestorm of debate in the 1960s. It is. Because Harry and I spent a great deal of time with Bill, in 1969, as the birth of our child became imminent, Bill told me that he had pulled out his old medical books and refreshed himself on how to deliver a baby. He assured me no matter where the three of us were or what the circumstances, he had me covered. Fortunately, we were all spared. Harry and I witnessed Bill's excitement when David, fresh out of graduate school at Yale, made his Broadway debut in The First, starring as Jackie Robinson. We shared in his pride in Jeffrey's work in The Tenderloin as the founder and director of the San Francisco Recovery Theater, and it continues to turn lives around. When Corey entered his life, we were delighted to see Bill so happy. Obviously, the stars aligned perfectly when those two found each other. Bill would write, "I don't know what I did to deserve her. Maybe I was simply and mercifully bestowed a blessing." And Bill was there when Vanessa and I needed him the most. He delivered the eulogy at Harry's memorial. They had become brothers. Bill was phenomenally gifted. He possessed both a blazing intellect and a rapier wit. He was also courageous, never allowing the effects of polio to define him in any way. He relished delving into complex ideas, but also savored simple pleasures, like making his way up the hillside to his lush garden at its summit, content to let the beauty of a sunny Encinitas day wash over him. In recent years, Bill and I spoke with each other on the telephone once or twice a week. We discussed people, ideas, events, and issues, especially those related to African American life and culture. "Got a moment?" he would ask, and our conversation was off and running. Having Bill as a friend for almost 50 years, enriched my life immeasurably. He was loyal, caring, and giving, asking nothing in return except a willingness to give him a bit of my time. I once read someplace that God gave us a gift of memory so we could have roses in the bleakness of winter and keep those we loved with us forever. Bill will always be nearby and in memory and in my heart. Harriet.
At this time, if there are one or two others who wanted to offer some words, we would invite you to come and to do that next time.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Hampton, and difficult to get up here, but as doctor's last patient, I felt that it was appropriate. Doctor was golden, he was epic, he was genius, and I just wanted to read something that was shared with me when my dad passed a few months ago. Had it not been for doctor, I probably wouldn't have made it through that. The person posted this: I know for certain that we never lose the people we love, even to death. They continue to participate in every act, thought, and decision we make. Their love leaves an indelible imprint in our memories, and we find comfort in knowing that our lives have been enriched by having shared them. Thank you.
Follow us.
Hi, my name is Fern Nelson, and I'm from Detroit. And I just want to say a few words. David and Jeffrey and Elizabeth's mom was a good friend of my mom. So somehow we have been connected through all these years. And no matter where any of us have been, somehow through friends, through high school, through whatever, we've managed to stay in touch. And it's really an honor. It's really an honor to have known all of them and to have known Dr. Greer. Being in Detroit through the riots were, of course, really devastating. And to have Black Rage come out when it did from our very own psychiatrist was amazing. The Detroit, the community, of course, back then was pretty small, so all the doctors and the pharmacists and everyone knew each other, so it was just like such a personal thing. Even though it made the New York Times bestseller list, that made it made it extra special, but because we considered him ours, it was like, well, this is our book, this is our psychiatrist, he knows everything. And we were always so happy with that. So I'm just happy to be here and see you guys and feel blessed that I've known you through all these years.